Margaret Sullavan was far from a typical Hollywood starlet. She had a privileged upbringing, yet her life was defined by fierce independence, turbulent relationships, and whispered secrets. Those who knew her marveled at her ability to captivate audiences, both on screen and off. They also feared her explosive temper. And somewhere in the midst of this fierce personality stood a close companion, Jimmy Stewart. Their bond, whether purely friendly or something more, would spark endless speculation in Hollywood's golden age. Yet beneath the glitz, Margaret's private battles raged. By the time her story reached its breaking point, those battles had left tragic marks on everyone around her. Privileged beginnings with unexpected hardships. Born into wealth in Norfolk, Virginia, Margaret arrived in the world with a physical condition that kept her legs weak, making it difficult for her to walk. Despite doctors and specialists at her family's disposal, her earliest years were spent trapped in her own isolation. Other children raced through backyards and played in the sun while she watched from the sidelines. Everything changed around the age of 6, when her condition improved enough that she could finally move around without constant pain or assistance. Freed from the physical confines that had restrained her spirit, she dove headfirst into play and exploration. If anyone had expected a meek, polite society girl, they were in for a shock. Margaret quickly became the neighborhood tomboy, the one unafraid to climb fences or race bikes with friends who certainly didn't come from her social class. Even though her parents hoped to steer her toward a traditional future, Margaret had other plans. There was too much energy buzzing in her veins to settle into refined manners and polite conversation. She wanted to push boundaries. She had missed out on so much fun during those early bedridden years, and she was determined to make up for it, no matter what people said or thought. Rise to stardom and rebellious nature. Margaret's parents dreamed of a conventional career for their daughter. Maybe she'd become a dutiful wife or pursue a respectful profession befitting their social standing. Instead, Margaret set her sights on acting. She discovered her love for the stage in high school and refused to let that passion slip away. When she announced that she planned to skip a traditional path and head to Boston to study drama, her parents were stunned. In their attempts to pressure her back into line, they cut her monthly allowance, assuming the lack of funds would send her home. But Margaret stood her ground. She found part-time work at a bookstore, rented a modest place, and continued to follow her dream. Her determination paid off when she snagged small theatrical roles, eventually landing in productions at Harvard. Here, Margaret's intense presence on stage turned heads, not just among audiences, but also among soon-to-be Hollywood giants like Henry Fonda. She had a raw energy few actresses could match. Hollywood might have been home to countless aspiring stars, but Margaret was something else entirely. She had a knack for mesmerizing everyone around her, often by simply refusing to be what they expected. That defiance extended to the studio system once she made it to Hollywood. Back in the 1930s and 40s, studios essentially owned their stars. They could dictate the roles actors took and even aspects of their personal lives. But Margaret refused to play that game. She knew her worth and had no qualms about talking back to studio heads if she thought they were meddling in her artistic freedom. Many expected her to be blacklisted or quietly dropped from leading roles. Instead, her films performed well, making the studios unwilling to lose her. She was an unpredictable force who at any moment might challenge a powerful producer or spark a heated argument on set. Yet her box office draw kept her afloat, leaving the men in charge both wary and impressed. Tempestuous marriages and conflicts. Margaret's personal life mirrored the same fierce energy she brought to her career. Her first high-profile relationship was with fellow actor Henry Fonda. They had met in the theater world, where sparks of attraction and conflict flew the moment they set eyes on each other. Her outspoken nature clashed with his more distant, bottled up persona. At first, these opposite traits drew them in. He admired her fiery spirit, and she appreciated his calm demeanor. But it wasn't long before their differences caused friction. In a bizarre incident that later became Hollywood gossip, Henry once complained loudly about Margaret in front of others, only to have her respond by dumping a jug of cold water over his head. She calmly went back to her meal afterward, as if nothing had happened. Unsurprisingly, that marriage lasted little more than a year. Their relationship was just too volatile, and they parted ways. Still, that short union left a lasting mark, especially considering the circle of friends they shared. Henry's best friend was an up and coming actor named Jimmy Stewart. Even as Henry and Margaret closed the door on their marriage, rumors started swirling about the real nature of Margaret's connection with Jimmy. Close bond with Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart entered Margaret's world when the two were still working small theatrical productions alongside Henry Fonda. Early stories paint Jimmy as the shy admirer and Margaret as the take charge presence. While Henry confidently pursued her, Jimmy's rumored awkward courtship never really took off, at least not publicly. Yet, as Margaret soared to fame, she pulled Jimmy Stewart closer to her orbit. She personally lobbied for him to be cast as her leading man when she landed roles at major studios. It was a bold move. At the time, Jimmy was still new to Hollywood, and many directors felt he lacked the polished experience to hold his own in a starring role. Margaret didn't care. She believed in his natural talent and insisted he get his shot. This unwavering support drew suspicion. Some wondered if her advocacy for Jimmy went deeper than mere friendship. The two shared an on screen chemistry that sizzled, captivating filmgoers in ways few partnerships could. Directors noted that every time Margaret and Jimmy locked eyes on the set, it felt electric. Audiences believed their characters were truly in love, fueling more talk that maybe they weren't just acting. Even though Margaret cycled through more marriages, most notably to director William Wyler and then to agent Leland Hayward, her closeness with Jimmy never seemed to fade. People whispered that she might have carried on behind the scenes. Others argued it was just an intimate, lifelong friendship, a kind of unique bond only they could understand. Whatever the truth, the speculation never went away, and it cast a shadow over many of her more public relationships. Relentless Hollywood battles. Margaret didn't just feud with her husbands, she also locked horns with some of Hollywood's most influential figures. She clashed with directors, challenged studio heads, and demanded creative control before it was even common for actors to consider such a thing. Her fierce temperament led to multiple standoffs, including one infamous blowout with a director named Sam Wood. Wood reportedly wanted to fire a scriptwriter whom Margaret supported. In typical Sullivan style, she threw everything into that argument, refusing to back down and shouting her protests. Tragedy struck right then and there. Sam Wood, in the heat of the confrontation, had a heart attack that proved fatal. Although no one seriously accused Margaret of causing it on purpose, the eerie timing and intensity of the fight became another dark piece of her legend. For a time, her momentum seemed unstoppable. She starred in a string of successful films, commanding respect from the top studios. But on a personal level, her life was already careening out of control. Family tensions, decline, and struggle with mental health. Margaret's third marriage to Leland Hayward brought her 3 children and a brief period of apparent stability. She moved away from Hollywood's chaos, thinking a quiet life focused on her family might restore her peace of mind. But the calm didn't last. Leland's infidelity blew the marriage apart. He flaunted a relationship with a socialite named Slim Keith. Furious and heartbroken, Margaret demanded a divorce, setting off a custody battle that tore her emotional world apart. The children, tired of Margaret's strict discipline, often preferred staying with Leland, where they had fewer rules and more luxuries. For Margaret, it felt like history repeating itself. She'd spent her childhood confined by health issues, feeling isolated and alone. Now, two of her own children were pulling away from her, and that sense of abandonment threatened to unmoor her completely. She tried to move on, marrying yet again, but her mental health deteriorated.
On
The
the shelf.
vibrant,
That's
feisty
my idea
woman
of a
who once
gentleman.
fought tooth and nail for creative
I just
control
dropped a flea from the
was
mix in the
cracking
bag for
under the
pleasure.
pressure of heartbreak and regret. Compounding the problem was a gradual loss of her hearing, an ailment that had roots in the health troubles she faced as a child. For a stage actress who thrived on delivering each line perfectly, losing the ability to hear clearly felt like a professional death sentence. The combination of hearing problems, her unraveling personal life, and mounting emotional turmoil led her toward severe depression. Friends tried to pull her out of the darkness, but to little avail. In her worst moments, she couldn't leave her bed. Sometimes she'd crawl under it, curling into the fetal position in silent torment. At other times, her desperation manifested in inconsolable weeping through the night. Even her oldest daughter, Brooke, couldn't bear to listen to her mother's cries and would cover her ears to block out the sound. In a final attempt to save herself, Margaret agreed to seek help in a psychiatric institution. For a brief glimmer, it seemed as if she might make it out of her downward spiral. Then reality struck again. Her hearing was growing worse. Her children were distant, and she had severed her ties with Hollywood. The life she once knew was gone. Tragic passing and aftermath. At the dawn of 1960, Margaret's battle with mental anguish reached its climax. Feeling adrift, she turned to sleeping pills to cope. Those around her walked on eggshells, fearful that she might do something extreme. On New Year's Day, Margaret was found barely conscious and struggling to breathe. She was rushed to the hospital but never made it. Rumors ran wild. Some insisted it was a tragic accident, an OD by someone who'd become too reliant on medication. Others whispered that it was intentional, that she had chosen to end it all rather than face another day of heartbreak and illness. Even in death, Margaret's life remained haunted by tragedy. Two of her children, Bridget and Bill, would later take their own lives, both in ways mirroring their mother's sad final chapter, one with a gun, the other with sleeping pills. Family, friends, and fans were left to wonder whether that cycle of darkness might have been prevented. Jimmy Stewart, for his part, rarely spoke publicly about Margaret's demise. Those who knew him believed he was deeply affected by the loss. Perhaps he felt some guilt, or maybe he just mourned the woman who had once shown him unwavering faith when no one else in Hollywood would. Margaret Sullivan's story was always destined to be as layered and tumultuous as she was. At a glance, she was the privileged girl who wanted something more than a predictable life. She needed that exhilarating rush that only the stage and screen could offer. Her success was built on a stubborn willpower that left even the toughest studio heads bending to her demands. Yet that very willpower often set the stage for her downfall in personal matters, driving friends, lovers, and children away until she was alone with her regrets. Her rumored affair with Jimmy Stewart, a relationship that may or may not have crossed professional boundaries, remains one of Hollywood's enduring mysteries. It fueled the public's fascination and overshadowed her other marriages, each of which added its own layer of drama to her story. She burned brightly in her heyday, then faced the dreadful combination of hearing loss, personal betrayal, and fragile mental health. In the end, it wasn't just Margaret who paid the price. The sorrow spilled over onto her children, shaping their futures in the worst way imaginable. This series of tragedies continues to cast a shadow over Margaret Sullivan's legacy, offering a sobering reminder that behind every classic Hollywood smile, there may be hidden struggles we'll never fully understand. Her life and death remain cautionary tales about the human toll of fame, lost love, and unfulfilled longing. Yet even now, audiences who stumble across her performances can't help but be drawn in by that fierce sincerity shining through every role. Margaret's presence, whether in old films or in the anecdotes whispered around Hollywood, refuses to be silenced by the passage of time. It's a testament to her indomitable spirit, the same boldness that led her to defy convention at every turn. For all the heartbreak and chaos, her memory endures as that of a woman who, for better or for worse, demanded to live on her own terms.